what happens when textbook form begins to fail when you get muscle, Dani and I are gonna talk about it. All right, guys and girls, here we are, we're the elites. And we just finished up chest and shoulders, and she brought up a very good point of, hey, when you get to a certain size, certain ranges of motion, certain form just simply don't work or aren't optimal anymore. And I know optimal is a buzzword, but to me it's the truth. The most efficient at building muscle mass, right? Or getting to look like a freak. Like that's what this video is about. Yes, yes. Like she's trying to get in the top 5 of Olympia. Maybe that's my goal for I just said it out loud. Okay, there it is, good. So what we want to think about here is when we were doing side laterals today, right? I was like, hey, my form isn't what people would call perfect, but I want you to watch it and replicate it. And that's because like, for me, when I was younger and my shoulders were horrible, I always felt it in my straps, like no matter what. I hated training shoulders because I literally was like I was doing shrugs for 45 to an hour. And it used to piss me off, and I said, finally, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna humble myself, I'm gonna figure out how to do this for me. So you can see, like, it's a little bit of rock. I definitely get what most people would call momentum, but I'm on that side delt. And that's what I told you. I said, if I strip this shirt off, there's no fucking doubt my side delts are working. So I'm gonna get her to be the really smart person in the room and talk about the application and why this is what it is.
So, in watching Chris, and if you're someone who also struggles with side delts, keep in mind training history matters. So if you've been training less than like 3 to 5 years and you're having issues with your traps and your laterals, this might not be for you. But if you're that guy or gal who's been at this for 5, 10, in my case, 15 years and still have a hard time not getting your traps involved and you still have an appreciable amount of mass, what's really interesting to look at with Chris is how much the whole shape of him, like go ahead and turn sideways. If you look at the whole shape of his shoulder complex, from his traps to his scap to his rib cage, the way his shoulder joint sits and then turn forward again, he's let this relax. He's really let that. Oh, he's too pumped. He's really developed here, but his rib cage is actually kind of compressed on that lower side. So for him, when he's doing a lateral, he's actually going to say, okay, how can I bias myself towards working with my structure? For him, he's got to lengthen that trap, and then he's really just going to hit the shorten range. That shortened range is obviously going to increase proprioception, right? The other thing we're going to do is probably hit on some type 2 muscle fibers rather than type 1. We're going to then roll into type 1 probably with those prolonged duration sets in that lengthened range. So I think that's one of the reasons that Chris's delts have gotten so developed is he's hitting fiber types and he's also working with joint orientation. If you look at the side of him, when he does his laterals, can you just go through your motion? He's a little in front of his body. If we actually took his shoulder blade and looked top down, like if we had a camera right on top of him here, his shoulders out, angled this way. So for him, he has to bring his arms forward to get side delt. If he brought his arms straight back to like textbook, that's just going to impinge his shoulder. That's not doing anything for him. And it's getting a lot of trap, right? So this is largely development of his body and how those muscles have pulled his bones in different positions. Now, secondary to that, one thing that Chris does really well is he also hits his rear delts in a way that is that's really a function of how much his body has changed over time. So for his rear delts, even when he does his laterals on the machine and he's leaned forward, so if you turn sideways again and just come into the same line here, so you can see he's oriented his entire body so that the muscle is actually engaged rather than doing it the way the textbook shows. So the more mass you have, you're probably going to have to zoom out a little bit, watch your videos, take a look at the actual joint orientation. Because if you can just stop listening to the influencers and look at your video and look at what's working, you're probably going to get a lot more out of it.
I've said that until I'm blue in the face. Like, I don't know how you feel. If you take someone who is uneducated and you made her and I lift with her a tank top, shorts that expose our legs, right? And you say, hey, what is that working? And the person that we are asking has zero knowledge of weight room. And they'd be like, that muscle right there.
Yeah.
Shocker, right? And you're like, oh, well, Chris, you're doing side laterals. It's supposed to work your side delt. Well, guess what? If you're doing side laterals like this, you're hitting your front delt.
And your rotator cuff's destroyed.
Yes. So, or think about when we watch most people do bent over laterals. It's all trap. So I always ask that person, like, watch your video back and say, what is this person doing? What muscles are working? And they're like, oh, traps. Where do you feel it? My traps. Like, yeah. It's almost one of those things where I get really frustrated when I'm coaching people when I'm fighting people on the internet, maybe is the better word. Like, I want you to logically think about this and go back to like day one. Like, if you just saw or you had to lift with your eyes closed and said, hey, what does that feel like? What muscle are we on? Is it your VMO? Is it your sweep? Is it rec film? Like, is it adductor? Where is it? You could tell me because where it's burning. Well, I think that somehow when people start getting experience, they forget that.
They start getting too fancy.
Yes.
They want to look for like the new sexy thing instead of just like moving the muscle.
Yes. Right. And they're like, oh, well, this doctor with a biomechanics degree told me that this is going to work. How big is he or she?
Reach.
Right, yes. How much muscle have they put on humans? Like, I swear to God, go to my Instagram and just do this. Scroll. There are countless individuals that I've put tons of muscle on. And it's not because, oh, Chris just pumped them full of fucking drugs, right? Like, that's the second thing. You could shoot all the drugs in the world. If you don't train hard and you don't eat your meals, nothing's gonna grow. That's a side rant. But we have to get on the muscle, right? I can't tell me gyms I've walked into and you see guys with monstrous traps and no shoulders.
Yeah.
They're training hard, they just aren't working their delts. They're training traps. They're doing shrugs, their side laterals, their rear laterals, all working trap. Or there's a reason like we see a discrepancy in no lat training. For years, I didn't know how to train my lat.
We'll fix that tomorrow.
Yes, we will fix that tomorrow. And it's because like you aren't thinking your body. You're either just recklessly pulling weight or you're trying to get too smart. Like, and sometimes we've got to turn this off and get back to like basics, what bodybuilding is, and that's an art. Everyone wants to make this into like a complicated math equation, and I'm like, dear God, like, just work hard and train the target muscle as effectively and humanly possible. So that's my thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts to wrap it up?
Just a little
Please
bit.
go.
I want to reiterate, I'm a doctor, and Chris is helping me. And so I think it's really important to remember that, you know, just because someone has fancy degrees doesn't necessarily make them more qualified. More syllables does not mean more qualified. But I do also want to hit on a couple points that Chris brought up with rear delts. So a lot of people talk to me about rear delt training and they don't know necessarily how they should go about doing it. So Chris kind of helped me out a little bit today. And it's what I coach my clients into, but sometimes you need a coach to coach you when you're a coach, right? I started in fully pronated grip on a bent over lateral. Now for me, that didn't necessarily work because I'm already in an internally rotated position. So if I live internally rotated and I'm trying to get rear delts there, that's really probably just going to impinge on the posterior cuff, and I'm going to run out of room in the posterior shoulder socket, like joint, basically. So by going to a just neutral grip, I've now opened up more range of motion, and I've oriented that muscle based on the joint position where it needs to be. This is going to really depend on your shoulder blade mechanics and your spine shape. So Chris's spine shape is different than my spine shape, and why that matters is his shoulder blade sits on top of that. That shoulder blade and which way it faces. If you can imagine this side of my hand having a socket on it, and that's where the ball sits, which way that faces is going to play a big role in which position I need my hands in when I'm trying to get rear delts or side delts.
All right, so what this all wraps up with is you take her intelligence and medical degree and mix that with dumb meathead shit, which is me right here. And she has enough meathead in her that her and I get along. So this is what I said when we were off camera is the magic of this is when both these worlds meet. And sadly, everyone feels like they have to be in camp A or camp B. Guess what? I want to live in the middle. And that's why I always got along with John is he had all the scientific research, but then he was like intelligent enough to know that like, hey, these meatheads are doing something that works because they're fucking freaks. So we have to be somewhere in that middle range. And I always joke, like I'm in the middle, but I'm a little skewed meathead. So it's like, I'm a little bit this way and you might be a little bit more knowledge ways. When we get together, it's like probably more this way to the meathead. Because that's what's fun.
If I'm training by myself, I do all the wrong things because I just want to train.
Oh, right.
When I'm with others, I'm a little more on the nerdy side.
Yeah. So,
that's why I need you.
Yes. So, again, I think to wrap this video up, right, is do what you feel, confirm what you feel in a textbook, and then application. That's the magic of the synergy of all of this mess, in my opinion, that we call bodybuilding. And at the end of the day, like, to me, my always take home message is this: have fun. And you and I talked about that off camera. Like, if you aren't having fun, good luck doing this a decade. Good luck doing this long enough until you turn pro or qualify for Olympia or, God forbid, win it. Like, it's gonna take most people 5, 10, 15 years to get a physique worth recognizing. All right, guys, there you have it. Intelligence, meathead, find somewhere in the middle, and have fun in the gym. Like, share, subscribe. Chris TV.